Hey everyone, welcome to part 9. Today we'll be working on shot 4-3.5. Why the .5, you ask? This is just one of those scenes that I hadn't originally planned to create, but after I had Jamie's lines done and looked at what I had, I realized that it was absolutely necessary. After Jamie frightens Mac, he'll turn around and take a couple steps backward and transition into shot 4-4. Right here, we're starting off by working on the backgrounds for this scene. You'll figure out pretty quickly that I'll have some trouble figuring out the perspective. 7th grade art class was quite a while ago. Eventually I figured it out, I think. Someone please correct me if I still get it wrong. The main focus of today's work will be on animating Mac turning around. So once we get the background sorted out, we'll move on to that. There we go. I laid out the construction layers a little funny here, placing both extremes on the same frame, but all I had to do was copy and paste them back into separate frames and it was all good. I was trying to figure out whether or not I should have a straight profile shot or do a 3/4 shot for both of the poses moving through. It's probably something closer to a 1/5 or something. I don't know. I ended up sticking with the profile because of the way he was turning around. He was turning around so quickly, and 3/4 would most likely be too slow. But I might actually go back and add one in. We'll kind of have to see how the finished movement turns out. Another consideration I made is that the profile shot is a lot easier to draw, and again, for this movement, you won't be getting a chance to get a look at most of these frames. This middle shot is probably the weirdest. I usually try my best to avoid doing straight-on shots. They appear here and there, but aren't my favorite to do. It's something about the way that the hair looks, it always messes me up. Another problem I noticed, just through the roughs on this one, is that the head is way too big. We'll end up going back and fixing that once we draw the finals, though. Right there, I'm just lining up the eyes so that they don't have such an odd dip in them when played at full speed. The middle frame, just kind of the eyes move downwards, which technically is sort of how it should look, but when you're playing it at full speed, it looks a little bit off. I should probably also mention somewhere the way that I set up my animations and how they're done in scenes and then broken down into shots. Generally, each scene takes place on one location, setting, or period of each time, and each shot is generally 1 or 2 camera angles that only need 1 or 2 backgrounds. There are a couple of reasons why I do this. For one, it keeps things a lot more organized, and I can easily find whichever part of the animation I'm looking for. 2, it makes it so that it's pretty easy to add additional shots that I either forgot or hadn't gotten to yet. Third, similar to being organized, it keeps the layers from getting too complex. I like to have 1 layer per thing. Like, if Mac's head is going to be on one particular layer, I want his head and only his head to be there. If, for whatever reason, further down on the timeline, Sam's arm needs to be on that layer, it's much less complicated to either have a separate layer just for Sam's arm, or to do a different shot for it altogether. You might find me using shot and scene interchangeably throughout this commentary, and throughout the previous videos as well, but hopefully it isn't hard to discern which I'm referring to. Oh, also, we started working on the finals here. Even though there's a good deal of frame by frame in the shot, I'm making the separate symbols for Mac's head in the instance where he's turned around towards the camera. After he turns around, he'll be taking a few steps back and will require some facial animation that would have otherwise been more work and layers than I'd like to have on his timeline. I ended up having a good deal of trouble figuring out how to draw his hair. It looked fine in the construction lines, but when I went to draw the finals, I just couldn't get it right. I mentioned how the head was big in the previous shot, and I think this is part of the problem. We also ended up redoing the face here. Watching through this, there's a couple of moments when I see that I drew the face, or drew the hair in a way that I was happy with. Apparently I didn't agree with myself there, and I'm happy with the result that we ended up with anyways. If you've seen MiserableMac episode 1, you know how Mac's hair used to look. Very anime and very difficult to draw and replicate. I played around with a number of different styles between episodes, and this is the one that was, this is a much simpler solution, but still isn't as straightforward as I'd like it to be, or how I feel it should be. I might have to figure out a way to do some construction lines that are made out of simpler shapes. It doesn't look like it should be too difficult, and that might be something that I end up doing a little bit later on. Here, there's a little skip ahead that occurred here. I had to pause the capture and forgot to hit record again, so when I came back, basically all that happened was I colored in the face and the hair, and now we're outside of Mac's head and working on the rest of his body. Because this is the last frame in the sequence, I'm making it into more layers and simplifying the animation process for when he has to move around. When he's spinning, it'll be much simpler and can all be done on a single layer, basically. And now, we get to move on to my favorite part, the hands. Some days will be good days, and some days won't be. Today was a good day for drawing hands. I'll end up replacing the right hand, but the left hand was spot on. That's how I always want to draw hands. Blockier and more cartoony. It just looks really nicely and just works really well. I redid the right because after seeing how the left turned out, I just couldn't leave the left or the right the way it was. It's still good, but just not the same. Consistency is super important, and even if it's the way the hands are drawn or shift dramatically throughout the animation, I'm aiming to make the next cartoon have hands that are all in the same style as these. I know I'm going a little overboard with how the hands look, but I couldn't believe how awesome they looked, and maybe it's just me, but yeah, I don't know. So right here, I skipped ahead again to where the right hand and that worked well with the left hand. Satisfied with it, I moved on to the coloring. It was a bit tricky to get the arms to line up properly, but nothing major. The last thing that we'll be doing is starting the finals and for the in-betweens. Next time I see you, we'll be picking up right where we left off at the end of this episode. I'll let the remainder of the footage run, but tune in next time for part 10. Can you believe it? We're already on part 10. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a little thumbs up. And if you have questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below, so that I know, and so that I can keep providing you with something to watch. To check out the rest of this series, click on the TV, and if you want to see the first episode of Miserable Mac, click on the computer. For more of my other work, take a look at my YouTube page, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again for watching.